Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, D&D5E. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgy kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. You can help us to do a lot here, and we're really, really grateful for it. A big thank you to our good friends at Dice Legion. Use the promo code Sinister and get 10% off all of your purchases. And check us out Wednesdays for Critical Failures, where we and a group of friends all play Dungeons & Dragons together. The link to all three of those is in the description. Without further ado, we're going to finish out our Genasi review, and we're finishing up with the Air Genasi. Before we get into the meat and potatoes about the Air Genasi, I cannot start this video without expressing my deep love and appreciation for one Air Genasi in particular, a Captain Harry Dumont. He was in a bunch of campaigns, and more so than he probably should have been, but he was an incredible character. He was played by Mike, who's on Critical Failures, and he was just so wonderful and pleasant to be around, and just you really appreciated being in the company of Captain Harry Dumont. That being said, let's jump into the mechanics. Like our other Genasi videos, we're going to start out by covering the Monsters of the Multiverse version, because the Elemental Evil Player's Companion is basically the same thing, but just not as strong. There is just such a clear increase in what you get, because it was just additional abilities were added on and nothing was taken away. So you really get this benefit more so to look at the Monsters of the Multiverse version than the Elemental Evil Player's Companion. That being said, Air Genasi are from the plane touch individuals from the elemental plane of air, or some of them are direct descendants of genies who have some sort of connection to, again, the elemental plane of air. There is a lot of freedom in the Air Genasi, and that spirit of just being able to do whatever it is you feel is necessary and to not be constrained by anything. And the Air Genasi tend to really very well incorporate that. Where the Water Genasi is a little bit more unclear on how to read. They might be raging, or they might not be, but they all kind of look calm at the same time. When the Fire Genasi are just very aggressive, and the Stone Genasi are more stoic and have like a strong inner strength and character to them. The Air Genasi is just free-spirited. They're you can't tie them to anything. They're very chaotic in that kind of a way, and they have a beautiful attraction to being free. They kind of gravitate towards those kinds of worlds and ideas, and freedoms is kind of incorporated into everything they do. As an Air Genasi, you can choose whether or not you're medium or small. Again, I would never choose small, but some people are really kind of inherent to that kind of play style. You are a humanoid. Your walking speed is 35 feet, so you're a little faster, it's probably because you're probably significantly lighter. And you do have dark vision, which is something that all the Genasi got from the Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, which I think is a benefit. If you're drawing power from a different plane of existence, I can imagine some of that power seeps into being able to see in the dark. It just kind of makes sense in a weird way, because a lot of the other plane touch individuals all have dark vision, which is kind of how this kind of came to be. I think, at least when they kind of brought it to the full like reevaluation. One of the other abilities you get that not anyone else really gets is unending breath. You can hold your breath indefinitely while you're not incapacitated. This is a very unique ability. I don't know anyone else that really has this, except for maybe if you were a reborn. But still, this is something that nobody else really gets to take advantage of. You can be smart about this, and you can try and hide in places that maybe underwater or something like that, and just be able to be stealthy and safe. You know what I mean? Like, and you can come up out of strange areas and set up an ambush like that. It's a very cool trick. It's not super applicable, but there are more than enough occasions where you're in a chamber that's getting like a poison leaked into it or anything like that, and as soon as you see a strange colored smoke, you can just opt to stop breathing and basically give yourself like no checks required for you to survive these dangerous scenarios, which is a great benefit to you. Again, it's not wildly popular, the circumstances that you'll be able to use it, but if you keep that in back of mind and you kind of try and use every situation that you can to see if a way you can use it, you'll get a lot of mileage out of it, or at least you'll be able to use it once or twice in the campaign and make a lot of fun things happen with it. You can be creative with it, which is nice. You also gain lightning resistance, which is pretty good. It's definitely great to have an additional resistance to you. This is, again, dependent on what kind of enemies you fight, what kind of campaigns you're in, but absolutely a benefit when you can get a resistance. Mingle with the wind. You know the Shocking Grasp cantrip, and starting at 3rd level, you can cast Featherfall spell with this trait without requiring a material component, and starting at 5th level, you can cast a Levitate spell with this trait without requiring a material component. Once you cast Featherfall or Levitate with this trait, you can't cast that spell with it again until you finish a long rest. You can also cast either of those spells using any spell slots you have of the appropriate level. Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma is your spellcasting ability for these spells. When you cast them with this trait, choose when you select this race. One of the things that I like to do is whenever I have a species or race that's using or that has an inherent magical trait to them, like things like this, or maybe the tiefling or the Yuan-ti, I like to make Gish characters with them because I feel like no matter what you are, you have this, and it's kind of a wasted opportunity to do that. If you don't know, a Gish is someone that uses magic and physical abilities or martial weapons or maybe unarmed strikes or whatever it is. It's kind of like a hybrid. You see a lot of this formed when people multi-class. You see a lot of this between, there's a lot of inherent Gishes like Paladins, Rangers, even Eldritch Knights are a perfect example. Blade Singers are a good example. Most Warlocks can kind of fit into this kind of game type. I happen to like playing characters like that just because I feel like it's a great choice. You can do a little bit of everything, and it feels like a general hero to me. That little tangent out of the way, I love Shocking Grasp. I think it's a great cantrip. I think it's awesome because you can use it offensively just to get kind of like a mobile feat almost, or like a rogue's disengage, because if you hit with it, you then can walk away without getting hit with opportunity strikes, or you can also stops counterspell. At least in this current version, in 1D&D, they removed that portion to it. But it's a great cantrip. It does pretty decent damage. It does scale with cantrip progression, so it does get better as you level up. And it's effective, and it's cool. It's kind of like the Joker, like when he tases somebody. But I really do enjoy that. Featherfall is one of those spells that if you have it, it's kind of situational when you use it. It's really just a utility spell. Very rarely will you be able to use it outside of a scenario where you desperately need to use it, which is great because if you're falling off a mountain, if you're trying to descend from one area to the next, if you're maybe doing some sort of infiltration and ended up on a roof and now you got to get to a platform, Featherfall will help you get there, and safely, and for a whole bunch of people in your party. Levitate you got to be a little crafty with, because you can use it to put an enemy up in the air, and that way they can't really do anything on the ground, which is great if they're only melee combatants, because then they can't really hurt you, and everyone else can hit them from range. Again, there's a little bit of utility there, but you have a certain level of craftiness with these specific abilities, which I think is great. I think it's very thematic that gravity doesn't really affect you as much, which is kind of a big thing, because you can levitate or you can fall slowly with Featherfall. I like the collection of spells because it has to do with almost like storms. Like you have Shocking Grasp, which is lightning. You have the fluctuation of air and positioning. I think it works out really well, and I think it kind of builds you towards a little bit of an understanding, and which is something that I really like about when you get spells inherent with a character, with a race or species, because you can get an idea of how their culture and their lives and their people influence how they were raised. And because of that, they have these abilities that come naturally to them. So it breeds a certain level of magical knowledge and understanding, and kind of your own importance of the lineage that you come from, that I don't think ever really gets talked about enough. There should be a certain level of pride in your species or your race or whatever it is, and orcs are a great example of this. They have this great honor to them, where it's like, even if it's brutal and savage and they're chaotic evil creatures, to like from one orc to another orc, there's a certain camaraderie in who they are. Hobgoblins are another perfect example of this, and even any of the other elves do it as well. There's a certain prestige to being an elf, and everyone knows it, and elves will not let you forget it. But that helps set an identity for how you see your people and how the rest of the world sees your people as well. And I like that role-playing aspect because it's a big part of like the worlds that you're in, and it really helps to bring things kind of like full circle to me as far as setting up the groundwork and the foundation to who I want my character to be. So in the case of my dear Captain Ari Dumont, he was a swashbuckler and a warlock. I believe he was a fiend pact, but he might not have been. It's kind of a little tricky. I know he was not a hexblade. That I know for a fact. I think that gishes really work well with Genasi. Again, that's a personal preference because I do like the additional spells learned. And I really like to incorporate that into my characters. I don't like to let any of the species or racial abilities kind of go to waste. I want to feel like that's a really important part to being the character that I'm building. But because of the nature of this kind of whimsical freedom and this kind of devil-may-care attitude that I think a lot of the Air Genasi probably suffer from, I think creating a character that's more of a skirmisher really benefits you. I think it's really tricky to play because you don't have like a regular routine that you do. If you see a lot of the builds and guides for all these like multi-class combinations and high damage per round builds and things like that, a lot of those abilities are bread and butter. Like you follow them in the same sequence, or you follow them in the same format, and that's kind of how you do that every single time. When you're more of a skirmisher, or you just kind of get in and get out, you have to kind of be a little bit more flexible with how you're using your abilities. So there is a lot of interesting decisions that have to be made, which I think is fun, and I think it kind of changes up the formula and the way combat works and your circumstances work, because you got to be a little creative with what you have. And I like that theory. I feel it's like a lot of fun, and I encourage people to try it once, just to get a nice little change of pace, because it's good to just get new blood circulating, and a little bit of creative mind thinking going, because you should challenge yourself from time to time and do things that are a little difficult. Not saying anything bad about some of these builds or some of these higher damage per round builds and min-maxing builds. Just saying that if you want to be a little skirmisher or something like that, it's more than just numbers running and looking at a formula or in a white room kind of a theory, because a lot of it depends on the layout of the map and how you can do things. So you got to be really creative and really attentive. So if you're tactical, that might be something you might really, really enjoy. And again, I think this just really fits that theme. I think when my experience with the love of my life, Ari Dumont, he was just very, very cool with his abilities and kind of knew functionally very well what he was doing. And it's always interesting to be challenged, or to be able to see someone do a unique thing in combat, and that kind of just makes you go, wow, I never would have thought of that, or something cool like that makes you feel like creativity isn't just a sequence of combinations, but it's actions that you can take that sometimes aren't damage dealing, but are still super effective with what you're doing. And I felt like that and the inherent abilities that you get should try and work in tandem. So if you can get that to work, you can do something that feels and is really unique and can also be really inspiring to other people. So maybe it might be something you might want to check out further down the line. with all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. I want to thank you all for staying this long. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button if you've made it this far and you haven't already. I love you, Mighty Mike. Thank you for bringing Ari Dumont into our lives. Check us out on Wednesdays for Critical Failures, about 9:30-ish Eastern Time. We're doing Icewind Dale. It's a fun campaign. We're having a blast. Definitely check us out. The link to that is in the description, as well as the link to our good friends at Dice Legion. And use the promo code Sinister. Get 10% off all of your purchases. Finally, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do for us is amazing, and it helps us being able to keep producing out content. And with all that said and done, thank you for giving a Spooky Kid a chance.